So the Cowboys indeed finished off their offensive staff. And, of course, we're going to talk about this. You know, Clayton Adams, the offensive coordinator. Matt Eberflus is the defensive coordinator. Nick Sorsen is the special teams coach. And in general, I said earlier that the Cowboys finished off their offensive staff. Maybe they finished off their entire staff, right? According to Nick Harris, Brian Schottenheimer's staff is now completed for the first season in Dallas, okay? So Steve Shimko is the most recent hire, and he will be the quarterback coach. Now, last year, we talked about Steve Shimko coming from Boston College, and I brought up the fact that the creativity of what he brings to the table is a lot, and it's going to be something very unique, and it's going to be something that we can all look back on and say, hey, this guy took the Boston College offense from averaging about 180 to about 300 yards a game, and they're doing all type of unique things as it relates to a hybrid style of West Coast, and they was looking really good on their run approach and a whole bunch of other things that I did my research on. But we didn't see it last season. Oh, my goodness. We didn't see it at all. So now that Steve Shimko will be the quarterback's coach, we will see how all of this will work out. And also, they did sign Ken Dorsey, so who's been around these offensive coordinations for a year, for minutes now with the Browns and the Bills, and we know the storyline with him and Cam Newton when they went to the Super Bowl in 2015. So I don't know where to place this team. I get it. You know, a lot of us are still angry and upset about how things turned out, especially as it relates to the Super Bowl and the Eagles winning, and the Eagles are now the new blueprint because this is a copycat league. But I come here to tell you guys that at the end of the day, this is what the NFL always been about: making the necessary right and proper hiring as far as coaching, making the proper aspect and inventory of your team, knowing what you can and can't do, and then when the free agency period hit, you got to make sure that you dance around in free agency. Regardless of who is on this staff, you got to dance around in free agency. Then you go into the draft. I've been talking about this for a minute now. It's just like going grocery shopping. You don't want to shop on an empty stomach. You don't want to go into the draft on an empty stomach, meaning that you got so many holes to fill, you end up drafting for needs opposed to BPA. That's all I'm going to say with that. But, you know, Ken Dorsey, of course, I've seen the video yesterday of him slamming things around, and a lot of people like it. They said, hey, at least we have some passion. You know, can you imagine if he don't get what he want from the Joneses and he get there and he starts slamming things around in front of the Joneses? You know, that would be hilarious. But we will find out how this will look. But reason why I want to pull this up, shout out to my guy, Steph, the GM. He says, fire the GM Jones. And he says, y'all complain about our front office and don't see any of you all on this type of shit, right? Y'all really not about that life. All right, so, and I get what my guy is saying, you know. If we want change, we're going to have to figure out a way to pound the table for the change, right? And there's no ifs, ands, and buts about that if you want change, right? But I can tell you guys that this particular year, this offseason, the way Shotty is assembling his team is a little bit different than how we used to assemble the team in the past. And it's all wait and see, because I know how we feel about a lot of things. But to be fair to everything, my guy Brandon Laurie, he stated that the Eagles GM, Howie Roseman, will be remembered of signing Saquon Barkley when no one else wanted him this offseason. Keep in mind, Saquon already was looking at the Eagles because he's from that area. And the Giants pretty much handed the Eagles this Super Bowl, meaning that they were already geared up to get to the Super Bowl. And when Saquon Barkley was in the Super Bowl, keep in mind, he may not have gaudy numbers, but he still demanded the respect out there on the field. They didn't line up no light boxes. The whole mindset of the Chiefs were stop Saquon, and they slowed him down. But we look at the repercussions of it. Look at the consequences. It allowed the other receivers to be one-on-one to the outside. It allowed soft coverages on the outside, and it was a crazy situation for the Chiefs. Nevertheless, Howie Roseman also swung and missed off of Bryce Huff, who was guaranteed $34 million and had an underwhelming first season. Philly capped off with being inactive in the Super Bowl. Now, the reason why you look into all of this is because even though they may have missed out on not Saquon Barkley, but Bryce Huff, when you look at this, but they hit on Saquon, they hit on Zach Bond, they hit on C.J. Gardner Johnson Jr., whatever that man's name, Chauncey Gardner Jr., I believe that's his name. Yeah, they hit on him with all of those names, right? And meanwhile, the Cowboys are still in their feelings over the Brandon Carr deal. And that happened many a moons ago. But he was our last known major free agent signing, and that was in the year of 2012. It is now, ladies and gentlemen, 2025. So if you can do your quick math and you can say, all right, well, that was pretty much 13 years ago. 13 years ago. And the Cowboys are still licking their wounds from that time frame. If the Cowboys want to be major ballers in the 2025 season, in the 2026 or the 2027, they got to dance around in free agency. You win some, you lose some. The Eagles lost out on Bryce Huff. But with Saquon and Zach Bond and C.J., G.J., Chauncey Gardner Jr., they hit on those boys. You got to take the risk. You got to take the calculated risk. And if the Cowboys continue to do the same thing over and over again, by the end of this decade, the Eagles can damn near catch up with the Washington, catch up with the Giants, and by this track sheet, they can pretty much catch up with us. You got to have the elevations of the mind of sense of urgency. You got to be able to read the room. You got to make the necessary adjustments. You got to wheel and deal. You got to draft well. You can't be drafting based off of needs. If this is the best player available, you draft said best player available. And if it's a situation whereas you already got a DB, and if the best player available is another DB, you draft that. You can already have a veteran DB on your team like a Darius Slay, and you still can be drafted in that department is what I'm saying and what I'm getting at. And you can cut ties with guys that you bring in, like the quote-unquote last time I was looking at the Eagles, they had a guy, remember, who's old enough to remember Bradbury, right? And they was looking at it like, hey, Bradbury and Slay, two good cornerbacks. But they moved on from one of them, right? And they were about this close to moving on from Darius Slay. So it goes to show you that you always got to evaluate your roster. And if anybody know anything, I can't stand the Eagles. But for right now, if it costs the Cowboys to reevaluate the situation, look at this thing and say, you know what? Our archaic ways are not working. Let's get into this dance and let's figure things out so that we can be in the mix when you're talking about playing football in February, outside of Pro Bowl and all the other stuff that the Cowboys been doing. So hopefully the Cowboys look at everything and allow some of these coaching staffs to coach up right and proper and allow some of these guys to go into free agency with some type of financial gymnastics. You can do it. Spread money, kick it this way, move it further on back. The NFL is a forever growing entity. It's not like they haven't seen a profit. They even profit. It was very profitable in the pandemic and all of that stuff. They're still profitable, right? So this is a money-making machine. Figure out ways, Cowboy Nation, to spread them dollars out and dance around in free agency and don't get scared of someone messing it up. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and the Cowboys been missing 100% of those shots, especially since 2012. You're going to get burned. You're going to lose some. You're going to win some. Post me your thoughts. Post me your concerns down below. That's been my time. I really thank you all for yours. And remember, you're listening to nothing but the best. Go Cowboys. Let's get it. Steve Shimko. Let him cook now, because, his first time around, I guess Mike McCarthy was looking at it like, man, I can't let this guy outshine me, No, you go over there and count some stuff while I call the play because I'm going to stall him and I'm going to call him. So hopefully Steve Shimko can help out the quarterback room and a whole bunch of other things. DC for life, not for short. That's been my time again. Peace. We out.